Finance Committee meeting, September 7th, 9:12 a.m. Mandy, could you call the roll, please?
Barron.
Here.
Bowers.
Yes.
Geiger.
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, call the meeting to order. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Motion carries. We have public comments. Hearing none, we'll go to Minor Munyon and the general liability update.
So we were looking for numbers of what it would look like if we took that museum back, just to answer that question. So updating the Historical Society Museum, the actual cash value and changing the value to $4 million would have a return of premium on the whole year of $11,278. So going into next year, if we decided to make that switch, that would be the savings in premium.
What's the
We're at
premium
like
now?
16.
On the building itself now,
Yeah.
it was a $10 million, that's a $10,000, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what's the
Where
delta.
were
what's-
we at
Yeah.
originally?
So we know where we're gonna be.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that with me, but I can
Wasn't it
email
16?
it.
Was it like 16,000?
So we're only saving $5,000?
No.
No, over what you were going to pay.
Yeah,
There'd be a savings of $11,000 in your overall premium, not just on that building
So
specifically.
what the premium is would be $5,000, or you don't know? what-
I'd have to get that to you, I didn't bring that.
I was just trying to plug it into our budget with a figure,
Right.
so,
If I remember correctly, it was 16,000.
I'm pretty sure it was right around.
Yeah, I
Say 11.
I ran copies, and I apologize, I didn't bring it with me. Do you have a copy from the last meeting that I was at? I had a breakdown of all the buildings, and I can get that to you guys.
I have a copy of it in my office.
Yeah.
I can always send it out to you guys again. So just knowing the savings amount.
I'm almost positive we were right around 16,000. That was the number we kept talking about.
yeah, $16,223. You're saying roughly $11,000 or exactly $11,000?
No, exactly $11,000 would be the savings overall on the three.
$5,223.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we need to do something then? We need to make a motion to say that's the
If
direction?
that's the
we
direction you
wanna
wanna go, then yes.
If you want to make, if you want to make the change now, it'll be a prorated that you'll see immediately. So when I did the numbers back in the 16th, at that time, the return premium would have been $3,300. So it'd be a little less than that now because we've won another 2 weeks.
Right.
But we can do that. If you guys decide to make that, I can make that today.
go. We'll make the motion and it'll go to the full board, so then
Okay.
Tuesday will be
Okay. And then
more
just
than
somebody
likely
let me know.
officially approved on
Yep,
Tuesday.
I'll let you know on Tuesday then.
Okay, so
I move that we adjust the coverage.
what was it, what is it?
$4 million actual cash value.
Yeah, to move the actual cash value of the Historical Society to $4 million for actual cash value.
Got it?
With no contents, by the way.
Yeah.
We're removing the contents.
Right,
We all
because they
agreed on
have,
that.
and
We
we
can
put that
in there too.
Yeah.
No contents.
That'd be,
Okay, do we have a second?
That'll be a
I'll
big.
second it.
Second, can you call the roll?
Barron.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Geiger.
yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
Okay.
The other question, which Doug noticed that last year in the budget, we had $300,000 for the general liability insurance, and then it said year-to-date, we were up to $360,000.
Well, that's because when we originally set those budget numbers, we were in the process of bidding out the insurance. And then we got more closely figured numbers, and then Meyer had said even then, if we do something different with the evaluation, it could be prorated and that number could go down. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that number. It may be one of the numbers that I have to adjust in the budget, towards the end of the fiscal year. Normally, if any of those numbers are out of whack anywhere in the budget, towards the end of the fiscal year, I'll say, hey, we need to look at increasing this budget line or this budget line. But that's why that one is out of configuration. I mean, and it again, when we're doing the budgets, we're trying to estimate for the next year. So if we would have maybe done something a little sooner, we could have taken some of that money off of what we've already paid earlier in the year, but you're doing it now, so we'll see what kind of prorated, money back we
That was
see.
an actual number, do we pay monthly, or do we?
No, it was set up on like I gotta remember this, this is a liability, yes. So it was set up, it was weird, it was like a 7-payment deal. So we paid monthly for like the first 4 months, and then we paid every other month, I believe. I have the paperwork in my office, I couldn't tell you verbatim, but it was pretty much all paid for by the end of July.
What would cause our liability insurance though to jump so much and not know about it? I mean, not know at this time, budget time of the year, what would change? It would
Well,
cause.
I think you're budgeting for it, it's not that it changed in actual paid out premium, is it, Jill?
Right, when we budgeted for it originally last year, we were also in the process of looking, we bid it out. So it was a number we felt comfortable at that time putting in there. And it doesn't normally, I don't normally adjust budget numbers until we get a closer picture towards the end of the fiscal year. So that number, we didn't really know where it was gonna end up for a premium at that time, because we were in the process of bidding it out. We had ICRMT and I don't remember who else we had,
Bliss
but
McKnight.
yeah.
When did we approve that?
I don't know without looking, I'd have to look, but
It would have been before, December.
yeah, it was, I wanna say it was right at the same time that we already passed the budget for this year. It was in the same month, I believe, but I'll have to look at the minutes, I don't remember exactly when it was passed.
I guess I'm just, yeah, I guess it is what it is at this point, but just, maybe we should have gone back and opened it back up if we knew it was gonna be that much more back then.
Right, well, instead of opening up multiple times throughout the year, I generally wait to see where it's gonna fall. Like in this case, Myron said we'll see a reduction or a prorated
Right.
payment in some of those, but, or return on some of those. So we'll take a look at it, and then usually towards the end of the fiscal year, I'll go through the numbers and see what we need to open back up.
I guess for this, you just said before the meeting started that we were gonna have to do the new application
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you have a feeling, I mean, the historical thing aside, do you have a feeling or how much is it going up?
I don't have
10%,
a feeling,
20%?
I can't give you a price, but let's go back to the increase. So when we switched from Bliss McKnight to ICRMT, it was disclosed up front that they were gonna do a full review of all the buildings,
Yeah.
which hadn't been done in some time. So a lot of the buildings, like this building and other buildings, were underinsured. So when we insured them to value, where they should be, for replacement values, then obviously there was an increase in premium.
Yeah.
And that was a full review. It took some time to do, and it was,
It did.
you know, on their expense to do that. So we kind of knew that going into it, that was gonna happen. So the other part is, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen the news, but insurance right now is rough. They call it a hard market. So I know there's gonna be an increase. I don't know how much, but I can kind of get a feeling of it. We got the application yesterday. So Jill will get the application and I'll be working with the guy. The only thing that I had gotten some contact from another work comp agency, and they were wanting to quote out your work comp. We work with them on a lot of the other municipal stuff, and if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to give them a shot at it. I'd like to also talk to ICRMT and see how that's gonna affect the overall package. So is it gonna increase the other policies if we take out the work comp? Or, you know, how does that affect that whole thing? So we don't wanna shoot ourselves in the foot there by bringing in another company to bid out some of this stuff, but I don't think it would hurt to have them look at it to see where we're at, you know, as far as that. And I think our work comp mod is pretty good right now. Anything below 1 is good, so I believe we're in good shape there. The liabilities, anytime we get a lawsuit, you know, is gonna affect the overall rating of how it's gonna play out. Even if there's not been one paid, if we're in the process, they're gonna take that into consideration, so. But the buildings, I think, to answer your question, is what costs the money.
I guess the question is going into budgets like you know we are, I mean, are you guessing 20% should we factor in?
I
Gotta
can-
have some kind of.
Well, honestly, I wish I could cap a number. I mean, they're all over the board right now. I can get a hold of him and say, this is what, we're coming on budget. You know, we're coming on budget. I'm gonna throw out to him that we're doing the work comp. And hopefully that'll get a little fire lit under him, but I can get a percentage of what they're seeing.
Uh-huh.
But I can tell you that it's from what we're seeing, it's been a really challenging year for insurance. Everything has been going up across the board, and that you can, if you got your own insurance opened up lately, you've probably seen what's happening there, so it's not great.
Yeah.
So,
Jill, what do we have in the budget? What page is this?
That's what I was trying to-
Right now for liability, I have 185, and for work comp, I have 129.
We need to double that, at least for liability. Close to double.
How long did it take them to do the underwriting or whatever? Once you have
it takes, as long as I have all the stuff, finished. It's an extensive application.
Losing 10,000.
But,
something that's going to hopefully be done before we finish the budget.
Oh, yeah.
250.
Yeah.
Put that up.
Which numbers is on?
That
When is your
would
budget
be
hearing?
Fund 130 for
We had the budget,
liability
yeah.
and
When is your
125
budget
for work
meeting to
comp.
talk about?
John, when's the budget due?
Budget is due
It has
a month
to,
from today.
it has to be approved in October for me to be able to post it 15 days for public viewing before it's finally approved in November. And those aren't general fund, those are separate funds that are levied funds. So, and usually I take them off of a trend. Again, this year is a little different because it's been a while since we've bid out insurance, and last year with them doing the building evaluations and increasing those, made a difference on what the cost actually was.
And when we moved to ICRT, I think it was a little nerve-wracking, because Tim, our manager, had always done such a great job of helping us with things.
Mhm.
He's no longer there. So I do think it was a good move. The county, the work with the jail, I think has been
Yeah.
exceptional.
They provide a lot of free services, like, this is the first year I have not had to do our workman's comp audit. I mean, I did it anyways, just to see the evaluation of it, but, normally I had to do it and submit it to Bliss, and now this year ICRMT actually, I just had to give them the documentation. They completed it, again, I did it too, just kind of to see where we fell, so, yeah. But we can increase those. And I also, when I do the budget numbers in there too, for the revenue side, as much as we levy or whatnot, I take a look at what's already in the fund as well. Cause I don't want those funds to be in excess too much, so. We can increase the
Yeah,
expenditure
On the
side.
liability, I mean, we're gonna have to,
Mhm.
this year, we're at 214.
And
Got
then,
in there at 185.
yeah, but I was also banking on making a decision with this courthouse evaluation, which will save us some money. I wasn't sure how much at the time, and I took it off of a trend, not knowing where exactly it would fall. With the committee's decision on what to do with building evaluations.
Our budget. At least.
Well, I mean, if it's at 214, I guess I don't know how much of them we're talking about.
I don't know how it's 214, but we got 260.
Well, because you're looking at the year-to-date, Doug, and that's correct, it is 269.33. And I see that Michael is looking in the budget book, and when I did those budget books, that was way back in June, so those were June numbers, so there was another payment made. So it's actually at 260 right now, 933, not including whatever changes that you guys just approved, and whatever we'll get back from that.
That won't affect it. Now, we have more payments due out yet this year, we're all done. Okay, so 260 minus the 10,000 in savings for the
Well,
building.
whatever's prorated, yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
for this
next
year.
No, I'm talking about next year.
yeah, for next
So we
year.
got 250 plus a 20% increase, possibly.
And then minus the 11,000,
I did that, I went from 260 to 250,
gotcha.
that's the
That
10,000.
needs to be like 300,000.
And we can
Yeah.
change that, that's part of the budget discussions for today.
We need to increase by 115,000 then.
115?
That would get it to,
Okay,
that would take out the 11,000 we're saving and
that's fine.
add 20%.
Right.
So liability, I will increase to 115. Gotcha.
Unless, thank you. Okay. And, all right, very good, thank you. Okay, Susie.
Okay, so I don't have the Blue Cross renewal yet. I was supposed to have it yesterday. It's probably sitting in my email today, this morning, which I looked, I don't have it yet, so honestly it's not. But once we get that, as soon as I have it, I will get that information to Jill and Amanda. We will be requesting rate relief like we always do. So I'm hoping trend right now is 14%, but I wanna be under 10% with you guys. I wanna be closer to 7%. So my Blue Cross rep is aware of that, and the original renewal, when it comes out, will probably not be where we want it, but that's where we'll work on the rate relief, and we'll automatically, the original renewal, when it comes out, will not have the applied discounts for having the other lines of coverage, the vision, the life, and the wildlife. So we'll automatically get 3% off the renewal, the original renewal through that. And then I will work rate relief down and get us under trend, but I would like us under 10%, closer to 7, which would be good. And then the dental renewal from Delta Dental came in, it's just a 3% increase, which is not horrible at all. And then Aflac is gonna be sending out a letter on the group side, they're canceling their group side policies. We have a list of people who is affected, but Erin, who is our Aflac rep, also works with other worksite benefit companies, so she is getting us a quote through Assurity. They're a better fit for counties like this, so it would be a better fit for you guys than Aflac. But then we're gonna get a proposal together to see if we wanna move everything over to that. There would be no pre-existing or no waiting periods for anyone, it would just be a smooth transition, just a new company, same type of plans. So as soon as I have that Blue Cross renewal, I will get it in your hands and let you know where we're at. We will have it ready to go for budgeting purposes. We'll have it down to the lowest we can get it, and you guys will be set, and then from there, we can schedule our open enrollment meetings and go from there, okay? Any questions on my end? No? All right, I'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Have our audit completed.
Right.
I'm Hope Wheeler, if I haven't met you yet, I'm a principal at Clinton Larson Allen, so just here today to talk about the fiscal year 22 audit. So just to talk briefly about the bound report you have, I'm not gonna go through there page by page, so just to hit some highlights, that's all you're set. So these were issued at the end of July. The major funds this year that are shown in there separately are the general fund, which always is, IMRF fund, and the grant fund. Then all other funds get joined together in a non-major group, but all the detail is in the back of the statements. As mentioned a few minutes ago, before the meeting started, good news, all positive fund balance, so nothing going into a deficit fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. We did assist with adjusting entries, or around 27 adjustments. So to get from more of a cash basis to a accrual, modified accrual basis and a full accrual basis. So that may change the numbers from what you saw at the end of November or early in the fiscal year, just because of those accrual adjustments that are added. There was a new GASB government standard that had to be implemented this year called GASB 87 for leases. It was a big deal. It just changed the way all governments have to report their leases. We're in the past, you would potentially just expense them as you make rent payments, or if you're a lessor, if you had income, it just got reported as income as that came in. Now the standard setters say you have an asset related to that, you have a liability related to that, and so now you have new receivables, lease receivables on the balance sheet, and lease liabilities on your balance sheet. So that took some time, got some help from a lot of people gathering, make sure we had every single lease agreement, and there can be embedded leases in contracts, and they made us dig into everything. Hopefully we got that all right, but there are some new numbers in there related to that new standard. Our opinion is at the front of the statement on pages like 1 through before. It takes us a long time to get our opinion out, but overall, our opinion is that these are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There is what we call an emphasis of matter paragraph in there explaining that there is this new GASB 87 lease standard that we wanted to point out. So if you compared them side by side with last year's, there would be differences due to that. If you have questions on this, let me know. Not gonna go over numbers in detail since it's November 30th, 2022. We also issue a letter to governing board and finance committee just with different items in it that our standards say. Share these items specifically to let your group know how it went with management. We talked in there again about the new lease standard being implemented. We attached the adjusting entries we made to that letter. We also attach past adjustments, meaning if there's some that weren't posted to the ledger, we share those with you. We make sure those don't accumulate to a large enough amount that they have to be posted. More information than you probably want, but that's, if there are estimates on the accrual basis of accounting, there are some estimates. So those are disclosed in that letter too, including AMRA pension liability per asset is based on an actuarial study and estimates there. That's the main estimate in your financial statements. We also issue a government auditing standards report. That's a separate letter too. This reports on internal controls over your financial reporting and then on compliance. This is also a clean opinion, unmodified. We didn't modify it for any significant exceptions. There are 3 findings attached to this letter though, just to bring to your attention. The first finding is one that you've seen in the past, and it just states that we assisted with preparing these financial statements and preparing adjustments to get to the modified accrual and full accrual basis of accounting. Which we do for most of our clients because most of our clients are smaller and medium-sized governments. So that's not an unusual one, they just made us put that in the report.
Is that page 3?
That is page 3.
You do have a recommendation in here for management controls.
Mm-hmm.
What type of flyover altitude controls need to be considered?
The main thing I would say is, in most cases, are there really resources to hire in a big, new, vast accounting department where you would have all the levels where you have someone preparing these financials and understanding all the GASB standards to prepare them and prepare the adjustments, someone else reviewing the financials, and then you give them to your auditor to say, here, audit this. So outside of that, what I'd recommend is just looking for training classes to understand the new standards, like the new lease standard. There's a new standard coming up next year on subscription-based technology. So finance group can understand and know what they're looking for as far as new accounting standards coming up and getting more of an understanding of the adjustments needed. So that'd be my biggest recommendation, is just if there's capacity that can be added or training that can be added just to make sure you're understanding the requirements. The second finding is on page 4 of the letter, and this was material or significant correcting entries. And we, like I said, it's part of our process to assist with the entries. You guys have to review and approve them, but these are some entries outside of just the standard entries we make that we wanted to point out. Some of the entries from last year were reversed, which is good to go ahead and try to do that outside of the audit process, but some of them were made with wrong numbers, the previous year's journal entries. So we fixed those reversing entries that were incorrect. Accounts payable at the end of the year, some construction projects in process at the end of the year, retainage payable on those construction projects. All of those weren't properly picked up and accrued. Some were missed. There were some accrued as payables that shouldn't have been. You can't just look at the invoice date, you have to look at when were the services provided, when were the goods received to determine if that's a liability at November 30th. And then there's some interfund transfers that occur right at the end of the fiscal year. And those can be a challenge. They have to obviously balance out between funds and just making sure all that happens early enough that you have them balanced out. And if it's showing as a deposit in transit on one bank reconciliation, it really has to be an outstanding item on the other to make sure they all balance out. We have to correct those to make sure they balance in the financial statements. So those were the larger adjustments that were made as part of the audit process, that those can be looked at. We provide the journal entries at the end of the audit for review and approval, and then what I recommend there is just going through those at the end of the next fiscal year as you're preparing for the audit to make sure, hey, have I considered all these things, so we can knock those off the list so they don't recur again. Then the third item is the schedule of expenditures and federal awards. Since you spend over $750,000 in federal fund expenditures and you have the past few years, you're subject to the single audit and you have to prepare the SEPA, the schedule of federal awards. It's issued separately, but in our opinion is in relation to these financial statements, that it ties into these financial statements that we have audited. That's why it's in this letter. But there were several errors on the draft of the SEPA that we received. A lot of it related to the health department and not using the general ledger for the breakdown of their federal awards, which is where the numbers came from on the SEPA. So there was a lot of back and forth with that, looking at actual expenditure reports then to see what was actually spent compared to what was on the general ledger to determine that the SEPA was correct in the end. So I think Jill's already working with the health department on that to make sure, and I know there was a lot of turnover and different people in place than we worked with in previous years to determine you have the right numbers to conduct the single, so we can conduct the single audit on the right set of numbers. What is to come, what we haven't issued yet is the single audit, the federal audit. That is complete. It went through our final quality review process Friday. We're clearing up those comments and questions right now. And I reviewed with Jill the findings we have related to the federal funds audit, and I'll go over those with you here at a high level. But then we just need, for those, we get responses to those findings. Actually, we get to these also, and then that'll be ready, that's ready to be issued. That should be issued next week then. Then the last piece to be issued is the state SEPA, the state awards, has to tie to the single audit, so that has to be done first. That's already done and through our first level of review. We have a couple questions out to Jill, but then that'll go through final review and that'll be issued hopefully next week too. On the single audit this year, as you can imagine, your large federal expenditures was the ARPA fund. So that was the major program we tested this year. We also have to follow up on any findings from last year to relate to other programs that we've tested or anything else we've run across. So just to talk about these findings that will be in the single audit report when we issue that next week. Overall, once again, a clean opinion. So we have findings, recommendations to report, which happens everywhere, but with still overall a clean opinion on your schedule of expenditures and federal awards. First finding is related to procurement. With federal funding and expenditures, there are a lot of detailed requirements on procuring vendors, even some related to when you're paying out kind of grants yourself to others, and just making sure you've done this due diligence that the federal government requires, which is kind of buried in a lot of federal regulations. But one of them is just the competitive purchasing side. If you bid something out, you guys do a good job of bidding when you need to. But then even with that, making sure, there was one instance in our sample that we selected where it was bid out, we could see that, we could see the RFP. But then on the back end, we couldn't see, okay, why was this vendor chosen? Was there no other bids? Was it the low bid? Just making sure you circle around and get all that documented. There was another case too where the feds break down your expenditures into things over bid requirements, but things under bid requirements over, I think, $10,000 are called small purchases. You have to have documentation of, did you obtain quotes at least? even if you don't have to bid it out. And there was one case where we just couldn't find all the documentation related to a certain vendor. It appears like you went with a vendor that was video related, that knew the building. Once again, if that's if there's a reason for that, if it's the only one that can do it, you just need to make sure you're documenting that it's a sole source provider, or if you got other quotes, you need to have documentation of that. Also related to procurement, one of the federal regulations is making sure the vendors, any vendor that you spend over $25,000 with of federal money, or that you grant money to, making sure they're not on the suspended or debarred list that the federal government keeps. There's a website you go to, look them up, see if they're on there. If you don't want to do that, document that you've done that. If you don't want to do that, if you have a contract with them, it's one of kind of the boilerplate paragraphs should be there where they certify that they're not suspended or debarred from doing business with any government entity. That is a very common finding, not trying to belittle it or anything, but almost every single audit that I've done in the past year or two where there's been ARPA spending, this has been a finding. Because a lot of the other grant funding in the past is with departments that deal with grants on a daily basis, whereas a lot of the ARPA funding has been handled by people that don't necessarily deal with the federal requirements all the time and may not know some of these rules, and they're not what you read in the major pages of the grant documents, or there isn't good grant documents, or they're 500 pages long. So it's not a common issue, but just pointing it out. And we've provided a checklist to Jill, so you can follow it to look at all these requirements kind of put together on one checklist that's more readable. Overall, just saying, we tested a lot of the grants that the ARPA, I don't know who all's on the ARPA committee, but kudos to everyone for all the work involved with that and we could just see what all good it did for the community with all these different grants. It's like, wow, a lot of good use of the funds. Just wanted to ad-lib that in there. The second finding related to ARPA is over reporting. Due to the size of the county, you don't have to report quarterly, you have an annual report, which is good news. The report's pretty confusing. We just found some errors in the way the report was put together. So we're providing the detail of those errors just so you can correct it for the next report or amend it if you choose to. Still think you have the right amount of expenses on the CFA, so that's good. It's just the way some things are accumulated on the report that gets submitted. Have some recommendations to make some tweaks to that. Two other findings on the single audit were not related to ARPA funding, but one was a carryover of last year's when we tested contact tracing, and we noted that there was overtime charged on sick and vacation days. And so we said last year you shouldn't be charging overtime to a grant on sick and vacation days. So did a calculation of this year 2 grants got hit with some of that. It was very small dollars, like a few $1,000s, but just reported that, have to follow up on any prior year finding. Then, and I believe that ceased during the 2022, so I don't see that happening again. Then one other new finding this year was in 2022, there was a grant charged with a large supplemental overtime payment in July of 2022. The concern with that one is I see that it was approved, and I believe there was overtime, but the point was there was not good supporting documentation. So it's an internal control finding that you have to have proper supporting documentation. Overtime, the good news is overtime is allowable on the grant it was charged to, but the support wasn't there. It was just like one time sheet with a lump sum hours of overtime on it without any supporting documentation for when these hours were and when they were worked. So any questions on any of those? Those are the 4 items that I believe will be in the single audit report that gets issued next week.
With regards to the health department, and from the state statute, it's a little confusing for us, I think, or for me at least, that what the county board's actual role is, because they have their own board.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the state statute, the way I read it, says that we're supposed to approve their budget and all these different things. it's kind of a convoluted mess as far as I'm concerned, because we don't really have clear oversight to that, what's going on. All these issues that you're talking about, we have, not saying it's right, but those things aren't being approved by the county board as far as if there was an overtime thing or a fine. None of that comes to this committee or anything. And I guess if we have to hear the, hey, this isn't being done right, to me, the first thing I think is, well, we don't even know what's going on. I mean, that may be wrong, but that's the way it's, as far as I know, always been.
Right.
And I guess from your perspective, should we be having those conversations with, I mean, should they be coming to us to be clear about those kind of things? I mean, it would seem so, otherwise, I don't know, maybe, then it's not relevant. If it isn't our responsibility, then we shouldn't be getting the
finding.
the findings. I mean, and I guess, I assume we should be, is what I'm getting at, would be my take on it, based on how the statute reads and the fact that you're standing here telling us these things. I guess I don't know if you have any thoughts.
One, I'll pass the buck a little bit and say that's somewhat of a legal issue. So I would see what you can find out there legality wise. Because I know what you're saying. But number two, it flows through you guys accounting wise, payroll wise. But once again, I know you can only ask so much and say so much. It does go on your CFA unless they have a separate single audit. So and I know they used to, because they used to do that, because it was the separate legal entity with two counties joined. But as of now, it's legally, I think it does flow into your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So it all does get grouped together for this. I mean, I would say maybe talk to legal about, what level of authority you have to help make sure changes that get needed get implemented, and just continued open communication with that group. I know in talking to Jill this morning, she was mentioning working with the new person involved with accounting over there to make sure reviews are happening that need to happen, because she's heard us talk about that a lot. Because if someone prepares a report, someone else has to review it and sign off that they reviewed it to really make sure that's happening.
What do other counties do with this issue of the health department separate from
I guess I haven't had, we've had a lot of the same grants tested, a lot of the counties we audit, but I haven't had anyone
Do they have
come
their
up with a
own,
question.
their own audit, or is it
No.
all jumbled in like ours is?
With all the ones that I audit, they're in with you guys, and I think there's good communication between like an auditor's office, a finance office, and the health department. And I'm sure there are boards of health, but I don't see, what I see more is the county is really, in those cases, they're the ones handling the internal controls as far as making sure there's proper sign-offs and documentation. But they do still stay somewhat segregated, because the health department will say, here's our CFA, and the rest of the county say, here's our CFA, but then the county kind of combines it all still. But I haven't had the same question there, I would say.
As far as the CFO and all that stuff, I assume we have to do it again this year for 23. and
Yeah,
hopefully that'll be the end of it.
That's what I just
If
mentioned
we
to
can get
Jill.
all the funds, allocated out before
Then that
the
should
end of the
happen.
year.
Yeah, it's a $750,000 threshold. So I'm sure this year with ARPA, you'll hit that. If over 750 flows into the next fiscal year, along with your health department grants that are federal and a few others here and there, if you get over 750 the next year, you'd have it again.
How much more are your fees and all that stuff? How much of a percent? I guess when I look back over it here in the last, I presume a lot of that, I mean, I know there's inflation and whatever else, but a lot of you guys' fees, we've darn near doubled in the COVID time, since the, advent of COVID and hyperinflation and Biden bucks everywhere. Is that a big portion of that, or a significant portion of that? I guess what I'm getting at is, when that goes away, will we see a reduction? And if so, how much is that taking of you guys' time?
Yes, you would definitely see a reduction, because a single audit is time consuming and we have to read all those detailed rules and regulations too. You know what, there have been years where you've had a couple programs tested and years you've had one program tested, so it really just depends on how many programs each year, but that could save, I'd say, off the top of my head, just throwing a number, $10,000 to $20,000 is single audit.
And then, I guess, also back to this health department thing. I had Jill ask you about separating out, like, how much time is spent with them, because I know there was a lot of, I guess, from our budget perspective, obviously they have their own fund and a separate, it's not in the general fund, their budget.
Right.
But yet we pay all your fees in the general fund. And that was why I was asking, or had her ask you, okay, well, how much is attributed to that? Because there's from my perspective, and I'm not here every day, obviously, but it seems like there's a lot of time spent on between the CFA and all the grants and everything that they have going on there.
Yes.
And we were talking about in this committee about, okay, well, they should pay their portion. And I don't know if you had got, I guess I hadn't followed back up with Jill, but if you had gotten that to her, or if you can get that to her, or whatever, on separating that out, because it just seems like there has to be a big portion of the overall audit that deals with the health
Yes,
department.
and I did get her some
Okay.
information. And I will say to that point, certainly some cities, counties I work with do an allocation of audit fees to different funds. I see it, you guys don't necessarily have a pension, but sometimes some gets put to a pension. Another area, sorry if you're in here, might be the highway fund. Because we do have to go out there and do extra work because of the significant capital assets there with highway infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that's something else that could just be considered, looking at it overall, and are there certain departments that get a large focus in the audit process? But health department's certainly one, just because of the grant requirements. And there are also a lot of adjusting entries related to the health department because the way their funding works, with some of it being reimbursement basis. So there's these calculations of receivables at the end of the year and these crazy government rules of if it doesn't come in within so many months after year end, then it's deferred. And so it's just naturally a lot of extra work.
Maybe we should look at the highway department too.
Each year they've done $10,000 for administrative purposes, but that's been the norm for the past 5 years. So, I mean, that includes everything from payroll to our claims work to, I mean, I don't know how that was set up. That was determined and set up prior to me being here, but.
Well, in your opinion, this year's audit costs, will they change much going into next year because we have to do everything we have to do? Do you anticipate, or was there any big issue that caused the more expense this time?
GASB 87 on leases for sure was extra, but I will say there's another one for next year. It's
Right.
GASB 96 for next year that will take time to implement. So I don't see that, I'd say that would stay about status quo. On some of the health department adjustments that we have and changes on the CFA, I don't necessarily know. That might be a Joel question on if you think that would be in good shape for this coming fiscal year end, that would require less changes and back and forth there.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say it'd probably be similar as far as.
But I think that's why we need to get that health department stuff separated
Well,
out.
we need to look at the budget too then too.
Yeah.
But anyway, no problem.
The ARPA fund, I assume, will be probably the only major fund again. This year, that might have taken a little more time just because it was new and we had to learn your processes and everything, so that might be a little bit simpler for year two.
That's the other thing too. I think we can, the ARPA fund, we can charge audit fees too.
Yes.
For this year, because this is the first year that ARPA has been tested. Well, I meant for like last year,
Well,
last year, yeah,
for our
you know what I'm
budget
saying,
purposes,
but yes.
We should put money to the side for doing that too, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say on that, for another county in particular, one of our invoices, we specifically noted ARPA on it, just to make it clear. I think you could charge some to it either way, because it's clear that we did audit work on that,
Mhm.
and it's an allowable expenditure, so.
Well, then we probably need to, just aside from you, we need to definitely have some in the health department's budget for 24. We definitely need to plan on something for 24 for ARPA as well, and from just a purely budget perspective.
And they can submit us
And
An
if we could
invoice
get those
or-
separated out or something to make it better documented, I think that would be good. But we need to communicate that to the health department.
that way the auditor doesn't get mad at us for not documentation.
Write you up about that audit bill.
And remind ARPA whenever they meet that that's coming too.
Yeah, and I can pull the invoices
Save a little
that
money for that.
specifically say save the audit on it,
What's the
that's
invoice?
not an issue.
Yeah. Okay. Those are my questions unless somebody else has anything else. Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks very
coming
much.
out.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jill, thank you, all your hard work.
We can just use this the next year.
Yeah, I do hope to be here sooner next year.
How much was that bill on that? If you told me, I don't remember.
I'd have to, made myself a note to go back and find her email and resend it to you.
Okay.
I don't think it was an absolute clear number because she had a hard time kind of putting a clear number on it as well.
Did I hear it right that anything over $10,000 expenditure to a different supplier should be run across an unimproved list? Is that right?
Federal expenditure, if it's
Oh,
a
it's
federal
federal.
expenditure. And the thing is we did the whole process, it's just the documentation part of it. Which they sent me the checklist and stuff that other counties and things are using, so we'll implement that and, I'll get that caught up, but clearly we have the quotes, we've required 2 quotes for each ARPA application and all that, and we have that, it just wasn't documented the way they wanted it to.
Okay, so any money going to ARPA, that's supposed to be checked on against that list if it's over 10 grand, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get those numbers, because hopefully between that and the ARPA fee costs will make our budget okay, because I know the amount in the budget's a little bit less than it was this year, but presumably health department and ARPA are gonna pay, and hopefully they'll cover that gap.
Yeah.
I would
Highway
assume it's-
transfers, 10,000 for admin, and the health department approved budget, which is, oh, come on now,
Even if we
is 25,000 for whatever IT and admin fees. The health department's approved budget that I sent you guys, that I emailed you guys, is 25,000 for next year. And then 10,000 from highway. So 35,000 from highway and health department are for administrative fees, IT services, so.
How much was, health was getting, how much before?
25, it's been 25 the past, this will be the 3rd year. Prior to that, it was 30,000, 20,000, and then 10,000 prior to that, so.
I guess as far as I'm concerned, and according to the state statute, they can approve all the budgets they want until our board approves it, it's not really approved, so I think we need to get the actual, what that cost is according to the state, and if they're paying us 25,000, that had nothing to do with the audit. Or if it did, then we need to get clear on that.
The approved budget that I got for their admin is a negative number anyway, so I don't know, I was.
Yeah, well, we need to get to the bottom of it, but that have to happen in a second. And I think we do need to get clear, maybe we need to talk to Jim Devine, but this is a very confusing arrangement, to say the least, and it has been for all the time I've been on board. In fact, I used to be on the health committee, and it was a little puzzling what we were even doing. Okay. Bernie is not here, but you had
Bernie
something.
could not
from
come today. He is working with Rooter Technologies on backup internet situation and what it would take to reroute IPs and so he's working with them. He is coming to both the October and the November meeting. I verified with him that we don't have any major projects for IT that need to be budgeted, and I explained that I put a standard holding in there in case the server goes out or whatever the case may be. But next month, he should have more to talk about the backup internet and how that could possibly work. I also asked him to bring me an updated 5-year plan like we used to get from Michael Tabor when the old Bernie. So he's supposed to have those two for us in October, and he'll be here in both October and November.
Okay. All right. Department heads, Bree, you got anything?
Yeah, so tax, I said that I had a new employee starting yesterday. She came, she saw, she left, so she was here a whole half hour, and I think I might have overwhelmed her. Anyway, searching for another new employee. You what?
Way to go.
I know, it just, but circulation for petitions has started. So anyone can come in and pick up a packet. We've got 8 county board seats up, county officials and precinct committee people to pick up packets in my office. Otherwise, that's really all I have.
Okay.
Most of you don't know me, it's me, I'm in the supervisor assessment office. I announced that I hired somebody, and I had better luck than Bree did. She's still working. I also announced at tax and zoning that I requested a special meeting. It will be September 28th in regards to asking for some ARPA funds for an aerial flyover by Eagle View Technologies. And also, right after them, another CAMA program, similar to the DevNet that was spoken about prior to me coming on, a similar project to that. A county that uses Eagle View and Vanguard, the other CAMA program, is Moultrie County. So if you wanted to take a look and see kind of what I'm shooting for, that is my end result, is Moultrie County. You can see how they're utilizing those things. The second thing I have is I'm looking to, and I don't know if I need to get with Jim Devine, putting a letter together to the townships that currently don't have assessors, that I'm having to do the work to go out and inspect these properties and do all the work. And I don't know how it's been handled in the past, but do like a per parcel count. If they're not gonna hire somebody to do it, then we're gonna charge them if I have to do the work. So perfect example is yesterday I had to go to Pappanaw. I got word that there was some new construction. Yeah, there was like over 500 square feet added to a property. So that takes time away from me being in the office, so that they should be charged for it. Partially that Eagle View technology, if we get them, they'll have a program called Change Finder. So we'll take our current GIS imaging from 2014, compare it to what they'll fly over, which my hopes would be the spring if we go with it. And then they can shoot me an Excel spreadsheet per parcel of square footage differences of over 150 square feet. So it'll start picking up all these things we don't have. So.
Why is, I guess, in agriculture, I mean, I can get images of our fields updated with NDVI imagery and stuff like that every couple of days. I mean, it'll update what the crop conditions are and stuff like that. Why in this space is, I mean, those are satellite images. Why is it such a massive undertaking in dollar amount to get new aerial images, for government? I guess, or why is it so expensive? I don't quite understand.
I'm not sure why either. I mean, I can't, if I go to look at a property, I don't have the updated imagery on it, so.
Right. Well, and I know Google doesn't update theirs for some time, but I find it a little tricky because, like I said, every couple of days I can see if the crop's changing or this or that. It'll go from red to green and different things. I mean, you wouldn't think if they can do all that stuff and get that kind of information from a satellite every 2-3 days, that why couldn't they snap a picture at the same time? Yes, sir.
I can also tell you, even Google imagery from satellite, they'll get as close, or almost as close as like EagleView is offering. But it's still at an exorbitant rate, even for satellite imagery that they're already doing. You're literally taking it down to a very fine image, even from the satellite. So Google's no cheaper than what you're gonna see from EagleView, unfortunately.
These guys are doing this stuff on every farm acre across the entire Midwest, every 2-3 days. There's no, and I don't pay a cent for it. I mean, so I just
Somebody
can't.
pays something.
Well, I'm not saying they don't, but my point is this is completely on scale. I mean, nobody on my behalf is paying for my 4,000 acres, $10,000 every year for me to be able to see it.
Part of what me has talked about with this latest firm, I think, is they'll look at this week's photo compared to last week's photo and let you know that
So it
any
is
changes.
on a regular basis, or this
No.
is just a one-time?
They have different proposals for
Right.
different things, so I mean, at a bare minimum of one time,
I think it's purely that they're taking the government and the woodshed on all of it, because it can't be that expensive to take a picture. I'm not saying that's your fault, I just think that they're taking advantage of all these different entities.
I think the software-
It doesn't make sense.
The software then notes the building size and then brings it for attention where
Sure. Well, I can see that, but if you gotta pay, how much are we talking here, hundreds of thousands of dollars? And
yeah, for
that's a one-time update. And that's good,
the,
yeah,
the
you can
cheapest
see it.
one was, yeah, a couple 100,000, but that was 2 flyovers over a period of time. I don't know that that's necessary. If we could just get it once to compare it to 2014, I
No,
think
I
that
get
would
what
be
you're
very
doing, and it's probably
beneficial.
the right thing that needs to be done, it's just, it's not that, it makes my mind hurt how, on one hand, I can get all this information like that, and this, then we gotta spend $200,000 to get the same information, but I'm probably not gonna solve that. Okay, anything else, sir?
That's it.
Okay, very good. Eric, or you guys?
Yep, right now we're in the process of going through a UCAD system, sheriff's already part of that endeavor. Yesterday was cut over of the new system. It's not without its challenges, but it seems to be going as well as could be expected, so that's a good news part of it. Like I said, it's not without its challenges, so we're muddling through. The internet, we had another outage again. Knocked out 911 again.
And you said something about Bernie was looking at something.
What is taking him so freaking long? I'm sorry that I gotta press on this committee so hard, but this is getting ridiculous.
Part of the problem is there's
But it doesn't
information
take
that
a
needs
month.
to be protected from the different departments and the public on security side of things. I think it's state probably driven on some of the security side for access. So Bernie's trying to get all the departments to understand the security measures that need to take place and get this all blended in, where he's just looking for backup internet service that we think we could run in the building and at least temporarily get him the backup. But I don't know if we've
So
really
here's
talked to
what,
Bernie
here's
about
what,
it.
another- here's what knowledge.
I guess if it's this big of an issue, why can't you just call Comcast tomorrow and say, why don't you come out here and hook up the line? I mean, what am I missing?
I mean, I'm still going to lose some things. I'm still going to lose my leads access, so we're not gonna have that because of the security direction, because we gotta use the current internet provider, and that's okay. We can afford to lose that for a short period of time. The problems really come into, we lose phone service. So all our voice over IP phones, even on the county level, all knocked out. Yes, I have a backup, but I don't get recordings anymore until that connection's restored. So if something hot happens and the sheriff is going to it, and he asks me for recordings, sorry, sheriff, I don't have anything. That's gonna make his life very miserable.
Asking, can we patch this?
My challenge with Area Wide right now is they've been doing this for months now, months in the plural. What the hell? This is ridiculous. They cannot produce something inside of 3 months for us to have internet, to understand what's going on, sorry, not sorry, but we gotta do something. We've been kicking this can, it's been a year.
seems-
Starting next month.
Am I missing something though, that the phone stuff, I mean, we didn't have all these problems till we went to voice over internet stuff. Can we just get a hard line, telephone line in as your backup?
No.
Why?
AT&T is not gonna provide that. And you're gonna pay thousands of dollars for one little line again. How much was the bills before we moved over to voice over IP? It was something like
We
$4
went from
grand a
having
month.
one ESI bill that covers everything, you know, that's what we have now. And AT&T, I had like 7 different bills, so I'd have to pull.
It was a very expensive number to have a hard line one.
Get his department to take care of the backup.
Well, she said that he's working with Ruder Technologies to make sure the technology works too. I mean, you can run something in, but if it doesn't hook up.
But he's trying to hook up all the other departments with all their needs. of
But he knows what
security
these
and
needs
that.
have been for months now. Why is it
I
taking
agree,
so
no,
long?
I agree with you.
And that's the part that I'm stepping on. He's doing this for months now.
Agree.
So I'm gonna get off my soapbox and off of
Do you
that.
have alternative providers that
They're looking
maybe we
No,
need
for
to
Bernie,
replace?
to replace
To
Bernie.
replace
Oh.
Bernie, maybe we need to replace area wide.
I don't know, we pay him a lot of money, I don't know what that budget is, but.
No, don't.
That comes
Yeah,
with
doing
its
that
set of challenges as well, but that's at this committee's discretion.
But, I mean, if we're not happy with area wide, maybe they need to
I am.
know that we're not happy.
I don't think it's a matter of we're not having an area wide,
Okay.
it may just be we're not happy with our project manager at the moment.
Okay, so area wide maybe needs to.
And that may be something that we need to discuss with him when he's here next month and
Supposed to be
in
this
November.
month, I think, or last month.
But still, it's area wide's responsibility. If their project manager is not performing well enough, then the committee, I don't think is happy.
Quite frankly, I'll say this, that ever since, what was it, Rusty? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
He was the last one that was worth it. As far as answering these questions.
And I literally.
I'm not saying maybe on a day-to-day basis, getting your email fixed, other guys might be fine, but as far as coming to these committee meetings and like being on it, that guy was on it.
I
don't know about any of the other day-to-day stuff.
So yeah, I only knew Michael Tabor and Al Bernie, unfortunately, as far as our project managers, but do we want to discuss budget stuff or do we have a line item to discuss ETSB's decisions?
We got a budget item next.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Sheriff,
Oh my gosh. I swear, we've been so busy in the last 2 months, I feel like I've aged 2 years. So, the telephone upgrade for the jail and the sheriff's office is complete. And that's kind of it's been a trouble. I don't even know how to work the phone system, honestly, so I just rely on other people to help me through that. Deputy Reifenberg graduated the academy on the 24th. He's now on FTO with Lieutenant Moorfield. The body scanner is at the jail and installed, and all staff has been trained as of the 22nd. There was a $21,000 savings on the cost initially quoted by the manufacturer. The new Central Square CAD program is up and running. I was here until about 7:30 last night, still working on a few things, just to make sure the deputies had what they needed to get through the night on the new cases and everything. It's a whole new system, but there's a lot of good that's gonna come out of that. The new deputy, Corey Schinke, he's in the police academy as of September 5th. Correctional Officer Medina will go to the Correctional Academy September 17th. We'll also have another one go in January. They have to go through the academy within 6 months of their hire. The X-ray scanner at the courthouse stopped working after 25 years of faithful service. I thought that was going to be a quite costly venture. I did reach out to Melissa Romaine with Romaine Industries, who we worked with for the jail body scanner. She got me a quote for $27,750, 24 for a comparable X-ray scanner for like baggage. So if you come to the courthouse, your purse or your briefcase, whatever, your jacket gets run through the X-ray scanner. That's how we ensure that nothing dangerous is getting into the courthouse. So I reached out to Harris L3, who was the company that serviced our last one. They just got back to me this morning. They said that they sold their X-ray scanner, part of it, to another company, so I'd have to reach out to them. We have worked with Romaine Industries in the past. I did check with her and she said it is there at the factory ready to ship if we were to purchase that. So I guess that's something that I was gonna bring to you guys. There is money in the court security line item, but there's also that savings that we had in the ARPA funds. I did briefly talk to the ARPA committee about that, and they said there's possibly something that we could get worked out where I could use that $21,000 savings for part of that. The radio systems. So Motorola did come back with another proposal. I gave Mr. McTaggart that proposal. They dropped it by $700,000. A lot of that is the two different sites, the building out of those two different sites. That was like $600,000 and $800,000. So they did provide a 7 and 10 year price, which was around $270,000 per year for that yearly for the 10 years. So once we get that paid off, then we would just owe for the airtime for the radios, which is about $28,000 per year. So that's with the Starcom system. Now that's statewide, nationwide. I can talk to somebody in Florida on that. We're also looking into the digital system, as we talked about before, where we would put digital repeaters in the four corners along with the fire department's repeaters. Kenwood is doing a study just to see what that would look like and if that would provide adequate coverage.
I'll talk more of that in my budget portion.
So we could go that route. It's going to be considerably less. It might be comparable as far as systems go, radio communications within Iroquois County. So we'll just have to see what those numbers are.
That Kenwood equipment wouldn't reach inside of buildings though, from our last discussion?
For the most part, yeah.
It would not.
So Watseka Police just went with a digital system. They, the chief was downstairs in my office the other day and his radio did not get out. So the Starcom has a LTE side of it or a cellular side. So as long as you can get cell service, you can get out. So if you're in a school and you can get cell service, you can get out. Those also have the capability of adding Wi-Fi addresses on there. So say I was to get all the Wi-Fi addresses for all the schools and say the hospital, we could program those into the radios, and if the radio doesn't work, the cell signal doesn't work, the Wi-Fi is going to kick in. So, I mean, there's trade-offs. I was talking to Alex Ankem with Motorola last night at about 7, and he said Kankakee County bought all their sites, like the stuff that's on that quote for the 600 and the 800,000. That's for 2 sites. He said Kankakee County probably paid like $1 million per site. And once that's paid off, that's their equipment. We don't own it, we don't maintain it. The initial proposal was that we were going to maintain those sites. And I said, I'm not interested in being a landlord. I don't want to service a generator. I don't want to put a roof on a shed. So go back to the drawing board and come back with something else. So this is the something else.
Is there any talks or any indication that down the line, Illinois may make it mandatory that you are all on Starcom?
not that I've seen, just because of the financial implication. You got some very, very poor counties in the southern part that, I mean, there's no way that they could even, withstand a $28,000 bill,
Is it Indiana that is mandatory under the same?
Yeah, Indiana is all kind of on their own radio system, and it's a statewide system, which is built out beautifully. I mean, the old Sheldon police officer who now works in Kentland considered his house on the north side of Sheldon and hear through his portable everything that's going on in the state of Indiana. So, but Illinois hasn't built that out.
These digital radio, I mean, they can't do Wi-Fi.
As I understand it, no.
Alright, so the biggest challenge with Wi-Fi and anything, and this includes the StarCom, goes back to my soapbox a couple minutes ago. You lose internet, you lose that connectivity. There are portions of radio that you can connect via the internet, but again, when the internet goes down, you lose that service. So it has its trade-offs. But to answer your question in the short, yes, that level is available. Do the radios have Wi-Fi connectivity and all of that? That I may not be very well versed in. There's a level of radio called DMR that does utilize the internet, but specifically do the radios have Wi-Fi connectivity? Again, you have to have more internet-based connectivity inside of our radio system in order to make that effective.
And that DMR is not a public safety rated radio system. That is more of a contractor's type radio system.
So the walkthrough x-ray, sorry, I was confused on that. The walkthrough, what x-ray is okay, it's the baggage thing.
Yeah, the walkthrough, that's a metal detector. The stuff that I just hand you is for the baggage x-ray.
Well, I guess I would say we probably need to do something on this, and if you do it on the ARPA money you have left over, I would say so, and if you got, and then the rest of the money out of the
We
out
just
of
got
the
scolded
bailiff or whatever.
from the auditor about not having documentation on things, and we don't have a competitive bid, I think you're alluding to.
Yeah.
So can we get around that then, Joe, with not having two bids?
It's just a part of the documentation portion. So if we document that, originally we had gotten 2 bids on the body scanner, which the ARPA award was originally approved for, and then we had additional, and it was discussed and approved through ARPA or finance or whatever committee, really. We could document that, and then the choice of using the company that we want to use has already been decided because we already have an established relationship with
Okay,
them.
well-
So that would be fine. It's
And
just a
kind of
matter of,
emergency, so.
yeah. And like I said, I have those sheets that Hope provided me that other counties have started doing through this whole procurement process that has been mandated for federal funding. And we can start looking at getting those completed. The work we've been doing, it's just a matter of the documentation portion.
And I could probably get another bid from this other company
Yeah, we talked about
by
that too.
Tuesday. But, I mean, honestly, I called Melissa and I said, hey, I need a quote. I need it under 30,000. I need the best that we can get for that amount. And within a day, she sent it to me. So,
We could go ahead and do that, but still go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about that too. I mean, we can always stick it in there, but it should be fine, again, if it's approved to do it that way, and we can have it documented in our committee meeting, then that's documentation enough that will be suffice, but, sufficient, thank you. Anyways, but yeah, using whatever's left for the scanner towards that, and the remaining funds is coming out of Fund 330, which is court security, which currently has over 100,000 in there.
I move that we purchase the remaining x-ray scanner, money to come out of the remainder of his scanner ARPA grant, and what's not covered there comes out of the 330's court securities fund. Second by Charlie. Vote.
Aaron's,
Yes.
Alt,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Geiger,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay. Motion carries on the radios.
Hopefully
Is there
by,
any way any of these things, I mean, the existing system, I know it's not good, especially when you get out east and stuff, but as far as having backup when, you go in the basement or whatever, I mean, is there overlap there that what we already have would also work on it, or no? Either of these?
I think the VHF system is just getting so diluted with everything that's out in the airwaves, am I correct?
There's, the easiest way is what Sheriff's going down there. There's just a lot of stuff in the air. It doesn't help. We only have one repeater, which literally is physically in the middle of the county. It's about a half mile off the center, out in Crescent City. I mean, we're
I guess
big.
my point is not having it be the main thing, I'm saying as, okay, so if this digital thing isn't perfect and it won't work in the basement of the courthouse, could you flip over to the VHF signal that does work in your office?
Oh, that's a me question, because that's ETSB responsibility, because that's the equipment of the ETSB. And the answer to that is when I move it over to a digital system, the VHF analog system that we're presently using disappears. Because we're gonna be using that frequency on a digital purpose. All the repeaters and everything are going to move over. The current plan is to have a study done to find out, based on Crescent Tower and our remote towers spread out throughout the county, is to see will those work if we install the microwave system and simulcast. What'll happen then is we'll still have the antenna at Crescent, and then we'll have additional antennas at each of the 4 remote sites, which will expand out our digital system and radio coverage tremendously. Because it's going to Kenwood, Kenwood is going to offer guarantees based on their study that it's going to continue to work, which means we're going to get warranties. So if, for example, if you're over on an eastern side of the county and all of a sudden your radio seems to not function at all, we can then go back to Kenwood and say, hey, this isn't working, you promised us that it would work. Take a look at it and work with them on the warranty side.
During an emergency, you're gonna have a warranty issue. But do you have a proposal, or more recent now proposal, you cited some figures and
For the digital side of it,
for the Starlink side of it?
Starcom,
That's right there.
And you're saying that the 2 towers that need to be put up for your coverage, they're taking care of that cost and they're throwing it back at us.
But wasn't there problems still with it not working in the spots that we had problems with it not working? Am I forgetting something here? It still wasn't necessarily working everywhere.
right, so we demoed 2 different styles of radio. One was the one that the state police uses, but they also have the Starcom mobile radios and repeaters in their cars. So that system did not work in several different spots. So then the next demo was with the LTE side, with the Verizon SIM card basically in there, in each radio. So that worked really good until somebody hit the pedestal up there and cut Verizon, and then that didn't work either. So, I mean, everything is without its, pitfalls. So, I mean, the digital system in my mind,
Well, then I don't know that we can do that, because otherwise Eric's gonna be here every month on his soapbox telling us that, well, Verizon went down and we got a problem.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a solution.
Correct.
But nobody wants to hear me complain.
No, I'm
And I
just
don't wanna
saying,
be here.
it'll be the exact same problem, it sounds like.
It would, but then you'd have both of us in tandem complaining.
but Reagan Communications said that they don't even know if they could provide us with the work to get the system built out.
Didn't know. They
Because
said can't.
they've got 15 trucks sitting in their parking lot because they don't have bodies to put in the trucks. So we're gonna have to find another company to say, yeah, we can do it for you, and this is what it's gonna cost. But we gotta get this radio study done first by Kenwood.
I've already had conversations with Ken Kelter, who's Casey Communications out of Rural Clifton. I made a flat statement to him. Is this within your skill set? Is this within your time constraints? Because the man's busy and he's been very thinly stretched. Beauties of being your own business owner, it is what it is. He said he could still do it, but we've got to wait for the study before we can kick off anything, because that will tell us, number one, what our problems are, what it's going to then cost us to fix those problems based on what we want to do. The digital system that I am looking for is non-internet based. It is completely on its own radio network, so unless the tower falls over or the antenna falls off, it will still work. And I won't have to come here and complain, because that's my problem.
I'm not saying your complaint's not valid, it's just, but the reality is that
Yeah.
if we're stuck on if we got this many problems with internet phones and stuff,
Oh, I know.
then if we got problems with the phones and this is on the same internet, we're gonna have the same problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when will the study?
November, December, so we're gonna be well past all of us finalizing what we think those are gonna be our budgets, so we'll get those numbers, and then worst case scenario, if something were to totally bomb out on us, even the ETSB has already got plans for if we have to open our budget and approve additional funds to make this new system work, then we'll cover that bridge at that time, otherwise we're looking at FY25.
And I hate to kick this can down the road because it's an officer safety issue. If I'm sitting at home and I hear the guys, getting called 3, 4, 5 times on the radio, I mean, my heart sinks. I don't want something to happen to those guys. So, but, this has been a year and a half's worth of, meetings back and forth, and it just takes a long time to get everything done. So.
Is there, just as an aside from that, along the same vein, didn't Verizon, I know I'm not saying this is a good permanent solution, but if there's even problems with Starcom that you have to go to cell phone type of stuff or whatever, didn't Verizon and Nextel before them used to have the push to talk stuff, and then Verizon came out with something, and I'm not saying that's ideal, but right now, you're talking about that they're calling them on the cell phone to get communication.
Right.
And if Starcom's gonna have to use a cell phone based thing as well,
Right.
like at least temporarily until we can get all this resolved, could you
We've
not
already
have
got that
phones that were,
explanation for you.
Yeah,
phones that were better?
So we've been working with Verizon on that side. They did send us a demo kit. Their solution was to plug this kit into a portable radio, and whatever radio frequency that's the portable is on, when you key up on the push to talk, it talks through the radio. The problem was it was hooked to a portable, and if you put in the charger, there's all kinds of buzz and interference. So we're still working with them. We've got it set up to where if we've got a mobile radio that if Verizon gets us the proper cord, we can plug that in and test it, and that should work flawlessly. So going along the same lines of now the deputies have to have a phone to be able to utilize that, which we're budgeting for and going towards.
Well, that's, I guess, what I was getting at is that even if it's just the backup plan, as rather than, okay, you're just a sitting duck and you're sitting there with, like, I don't understand, you're sitting at home and they can't get a hold of the guy, well, it's better than a canary flying back and forth.
Yeah, that's definitely, that was a good backup. I guess,
Right.
for the.
Something.
the side.
And if they already got phones anyways, that's fair. It's better than having to hello
Yeah.
and ring them and all that stuff if it would just come through.
Yeah, that particular product really has a lot of really good merits and could be more than just a backup to us. But until we sort through, and they're not even small problems, they're actually very large problems when you're getting feedback in through a radio system. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't hear you.
Right.
So hopefully Verizon still comes through for us and we can utilize that in conjunction with everything else.
Well, that's it.
But time will tell.
Sounds good.
All right,
You guys.
let's move on, budget stuff. Just briefly, Eric, before you have stuff to say, Jill's emailed everybody what the latest was. It shows us $10,000 in the black. But I just added $115,000 to that.
Plus the audit
expense.
fees probably be increased by at least 10 grand.
Well, we don't know that because our net amount may not change, so we need to get clear on the health department. So I would suspect the health department is 10 more grand of that.
Exactly. Or even our vote would have.
Or a combination of both would probably cover the gap. Is what I think we just leave it like that until we know for sure. That includes all the AFSCME. Jill, could you talk briefly about that? So the numbers you sent us, other than this general liability adjustment that had.
So, ASME negotiations and the FOP telecommunicator negotiations have been completed. They go in front of the full board next Tuesday, so it's not like final, but, gave us some numbers. So, we're looking at the FOP telecommunicators contract was at 4% for the first year, 3.25% for the second, 3% for the third. Now that does not include their steps, because they also have a step. So with their steps, they go anywhere from, next year we're looking at anywhere from, 4% to, I don't know, off the top of my head, 7% with their steps. So, and then AFSCME, the starting wage table has been an area of discussion as minimum wage has increased. It's been harder for a lot of the departments to find employees, especially for the deputy clerk's positions. Highways also felt that. So the starting wage table was increased significantly at 22%. So it was agreed upon that any employee that made under $14 would receive a 24% increase, and any employee making over $14.01 would get a 12% increase. And I've already adjusted those numbers in the sheets that I sent you yesterday. And trust me, I have talked to Michael this morning, I've talked to Amanda several times. I've looked at these multiple times because it still kind of amazes me that we're in the positive there, the 10,000. So this is also without any requested transfers from Lisa Hines or Brian Suber. And I also discussed with Kurt about some of the tax revenue numbers. We know for a fact we got notification on the replacement tax, so I lowered it to $517,000. We also took a look at the sales and income and lowered it slightly as well. And those adjustments have all been made. You received them yesterday. So that's
non-AFSCME employees. Is everybody aligned?
Everybody's aligned. Anybody that is, like a chief deputy, executive assistant, not covered by those kind of contracts, they've also been adjusted in there to show the same increase.
AFSCME and non-AFSCME are all on the same program.
And then any employees that have been employed less than a year, the standard 4% increase is what is in there now.
Okay. All right, so we still got $100,000 now if this life insurance thing is a problem.
Yeah, and it's its own separate fund. It's a levy fund. You're talking about the liability. I made those adjustments. What you guys just talked about.
It's a separate fund.
It's a separate fund. It's a levy fund. The only thing is looking at that and what we currently have available in that fund, we'll have to levy more for it this year.
Well, I mean, I think, you can double check the math, but I texted you there after he left.
Yeah.
I think we probably need to increase it like we talked about. I forgot that it's its own fund, so then the general fund should be.
General fund, yeah, it's
We're
not
good on the general.
affected unless there's any major changes
Okay,
that you discussed today, so.
very good. Thank you for all that. All right. Eric just gave us his joint dispatch and ETSB figures here.
Alright, so I'll be starting off with the joint dispatch. Joint dispatch, as Jill has already covered, telecommunicators, so this year they're gonna receive a 4% increase per step. So once 12/1 of '22, once their anniversary. Unfortunately, the contract discussion's gone very long, so everybody has since passed their anniversaries. So roughly 8% for just easy math that goes across the board based on their time here. The really good news, the county doesn't pay anything more than what was already agreed back in March when we had the conversation with the city of Watseka, ETSB, and Iroquois County. So you're staying at the 126 for now. ETSB increased to 242,905.26, which you can see in the margin is the 239 and change, which was originally agreed. $3,000, really can't complain all that terrible much. The other changes that also impacted this, so you can see the transfer from fire, volunteer ambulance services, Riverside, and from our police. Originally, in the paperwork that I gave you at last month's meeting was an 8% increase. This went back down to 5%. And the main reason it went back down to the 5% is we've never discussed this with any of these other departments, and their fiscal year starts 5/1, not 12/1. So we're always going to have this challenge. We need to make sure that we're inviting them to the table to have the conversation. So probably in about January, we need to make sure that we get this part done again. We did not do it last year, mainly because we didn't know what the telecommunicators contract was gonna go. But now we have those numbers, so now we need to do something about it. So salaries have increased to the appropriate numbers. Benefits is still marked a little bit high. I've got it at 10%. I believe the last time Homestar was here, it was worked down to 9%. So there's a little bit of fluff. Jill usually fixes that when we get closer to approval time, so we'll cover that bridge when we get there. Otherwise, it's salary and benefits per normal.
Yep.
Another discussion that was out there was the potential hire of one additional new hire. Now that we've got a tentative agreement, the telecommunicators incidentally are going to meet today to see if they're going to ratify that contract, which means we'll be in the right direction for the county board to be able to ratify the contract come the county board meeting. So that's going to be something that's going to be on the plate, which is obviously going to change this budget. FY23, it'll be roughly about $19 an hour, which without overtime will be $39.05. And then starting FY24, the increase will be about $19.60 some odd cents, which will increase it to about $41,000 annually. So again, Chairman Schur and I, along with Charlie, all is going to figure this part out if we really want to go there and what's going to be the good for the county and the telecommunicators combination. So more to come on that, so expect this budget to change. All right, ETSB, which is going to be the next page, the one starting 720911 Emergency Service Board. All right, we did some recalculating. We decided to remove the assistant department head and the benefits associated to that department head. There's a couple line items that they're still on there, but that was the big potatoes. That was roughly about $55,000 coming off of our budget to try and get us a little bit closer to the black. But you can see that number is still negative $300,000. That is because we need a new radio console system. We've been kicking that can down the road for about the last 5 years, pretty much since I got here. And without going into too terrible much detail, the radio system itself in the back room is fine. The ones out at the stations are still running on Windows XP. Now, it's not connected to an internet, so we're not worried about any security issues, but a computer still running on XP means it's already ancient as far as technology is concerned. The other problem with it is the actual physical components. There's connections that with the newer main boards just are not available. It needs what's called 2 PCI Express or PCI, and most of this is moved into PCI Express, which is a different connection. You can't use it, it doesn't work together, and now here we are. So far so good, but I don't know where it's gonna go. So we're trying to prepare for that. Anything that I'm gonna be able to get, unfortunately, is gonna be buying used stuff that will meet our circumstances, but it's just like buying a used car. You don't know what problems you're inheriting. And yes, it's cheap, but still $100 times 10 adds up quickly. So we left the 300,000 in there, and we are requesting 150,000 from public safety tax or from somewhere else in order to upgrade the system. This is not the discussion about the radios that we just had with Sheriff. This is the council systems that are in the 911 center that are old. That is just the council. Now, some caveats to that. Starcom, if the county was interested and able to do that, this contains a Council X system in there, correct, Sheriff? Does that quote contain the Council X?
Yes.
Okay. That's an additional cost that has to sit at the 911 center in order for us to be able to communicate. That is part of that quote. ETSB, unless some of the villages are going on board with this system, cannot touch it, cannot put anything financial towards that system. And that's because of how the ETS Act is set up. We can't put money towards something that is just for the designation of one department. So if all the villages were able to go, or at least one of the villages, then we could have a conversation about what ETSB funds could go to a system such as that. Ideally, we are looking at a digital system and building that out. Now, this is the simulcast system that I mentioned earlier. What is that going to cost us? We're going to find out here probably November, December is probably what I'm more predicting. Again, we're going to get guarantees from Kenwood. That'll tell us what it's going to actually cost to build out, what challenges we're going to have, and what we need to add to make this system work, at least in the function that we want. Are we going to be at 100% radio coverage ever? No. Nothing works at 100%. We might get to 95, but we're not going to get to 100. It is what it is. Digital systems are definitely a better route to go. Literally, they work until they no longer work. So where on analog you get this fall off as the farther you get away from an antenna, the digital system will continue to work in the same way until it stops. So it's literally running to a brick wall when you stop it. That's where the communication ceases. Now, wood homes, brick homes, or commercial businesses, brick and metal, are terrible for internet reception or radio reception, period, and end of story. Obviously, brick and metal, the worse it is. It's just a Faraday cage. That's why your cell phone services usually tend to go down from 5 bars outside, you walk 5 feet in the door, and then all of a sudden you're down to 2. This is going to be no different. This is still working on a frequency just like your cell phones do, whether it's VHF, UHF, 800, or even Starcom stuff. You're going to have those same challenges regardless of what system you're using. Obviously, the more antennas that you have, the better chances you have to get that coverage. I'm predicting, and this is literally the best guess that I could possibly give, around the $200,000 mark to build out the system. That's repeaters, that's labor, that's antennas going up on towers. That is not with the expectation that we need to add another tower. A new $300,000 tower is roughly about $300,000. And depending on where it needs to go, could make its problems as well, because if we put up a new tower, we're going to have to, as Sheriff's already talked to, we're going to have to put in a little building, we're going to have to put in a generator, we're going to have to maintain the generator and everything else that goes along with it. Now, there is the possibility we could offset some of that, because when you put up a tower, people like to stick their antennas on top of it, and you can charge rent. How that would even work would be a question for our state's attorney and what the ETSB can do. But we'll have to cross that bridge when or if we ever get there.
I mean, as many towers and stuff as there are around.
There is that possibility as well. But we're still going to have the challenge of wherever we stick an antenna and a repeater, does it have generator power? And if it has generator power, we should be fine because we need to be able to guarantee as much uptime as we can on that tower because of what we're doing.
I think most of those do, don't they?
They should.
I got a 130-foot tower in my yard if you guys want to throw something on there.
The second site that Starcom was looking at was the new tower by Donovan. That's owned by Milner Broadcasting, I believe. So, and that's a brand new tower, and that's what we'd be looking at for that second location. But so that has the generator and all that stuff. But we would have to pay Milner Media rent on that tower unless I'm able to make a really sweet deal with them.
Okay, and then getting the ETSB to agree to it.
And then you still need all the radios and stuff, so like $200,000 in the best case scenario, and then you still need radios for everybody.
Well, the radios themselves, so all the villages would be responsible for the radios. Sheriff will still be responsible for purchasing whatever necessary upgrades he needs to his radios. The good news is quite a bit of this has already been handled because I've been telling everybody already. Make sure that you're purchasing Next Edge capable Kenwood radios. And this is going to be the digital part, Next Edge. So most of that work's already been handled. Most of them, anybody that's been buying from KC Communications, he already knows what my plan is. He's already been selling analog and digital capable radios. So there's just a few left in the sheriff's office. You're going to have to upgrade regardless. So it's going to be something that he's working on regard whatever happens with the Starcom decision. You will see in the biggest highlight in this one is we're also requesting $150,000 from public safety tax. That's up in the revenue line items. The miscellaneous of $4,000, I did not remove that last night, but that's going to disappear. That was in case we had to back up the date on our CAD jail record system that we went live on yesterday. So that $4,000 is originally from a transfer from sheriff, but that will no longer be happening. We're not going to need to pay the maintenance since the system is done. Okay, questions? Sorry, I spent so much information out at you. I'm sure the sponge is kind of full.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think I half understand what's going on, so unless somebody else has another question. I think we're good.
All right, I'm gonna head back to my office and make sure there's no grenades going off.
All right.
Check to see if the internet works.
Touche.
I think the committee needs to be sure they understand that the 4% increase for the telecommunicators is for this year, not next year. So what we're looking at for the budget for next year is the 3.25%.
Okay, thank you for.
Because it was in arrears, right, because we're behind.
So we should
If we approve the tentative agreement next Tuesday, then they will all be getting back pay back to.
We know how much that's gonna cost.
Not quite yet, or at least I haven't calculated.
Yeah, pay out of this.
The back pay, I don't. Once it's approved on Tuesday, then Amanda usually will start working on that and then we'll work on it or make sure that it's,
No. What I can mention on that is the present budget year only has a 2.5% step increase. So you're gonna have, so what you're gonna be trying to find is that 1.5% remaining.
the telecommunicator salary lines are already blown without any back pay.
Don't mind me. Which I already used.
So, I guess I'm confused, and on the latest thing today then, where we thought we were 10,000 ahead, does that include the 4% back pay that we owe?
No, but we're gonna owe that.
No, but that wouldn't come out of general anyways, and that would come out of this year. That would come out of this year, so more than likely, once the back pay figures are done after Tuesday and we have numbers, then the committee will decide where they wanna pay it out of. In the past, back pay was approved to get paid out of public safety tax, which is Fund 200. But that's gonna be a committee decision on where you guys wanna pay that out.
But if it's about 1.5%, rough numbers.
Per step.
The telecommunicators line for this fiscal year is already over. That fund, the joint dispatch fund, which you should see from the treasurer's reports that you'll get on Tuesday, is already in the negative again, after I've already done the transfer.
Does that include the?
So for budget purposes, on this sheet,
This is not a verified treasurer's
No, they got,
report. It's already in here.
this is for the back.
for next year,
For
they,
next year.
the 3.5% is.
Yeah.
In there.
Oh, okay.
3.25.
Well,
I'm trying to catch you.
I mean, if I just take 550,000, which is the projected for this year, times 1.5%, 1.5%, because you get two, you basically gotta double that number. So times 3%, that's, there's probably back pay somewhere less of 20 grand.
Right.
That's my,
I was trying to see your number.
oh, that's my rough
Well, we can draw
estimate.
interest on all that money, so we're really ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I think the one thing, whether we settle it today or not, we gotta get this, and we have to settle it here next meeting for sure, but, is the public safety thing. Where are we at on the public safety balance? Do you know?
Yeah.
We have the latest number?
Now, this is unverified from the treasurer's office.
Yep.
But the current public safety is at $628,697.15.
Then, that's through, like, literally today, so
Today,
we got
yeah,
like
again,
September,
you
October,
know,
November, we got
I don't
3
know
more
what they
months.
have balanced, so it may be off
What were we
a
getting?
little
like
bit, but not, usually not much.
530 divided by 12. We're getting like 44,000 a month, is that right, roughly? 40,000?
We've been averaging 25 or 30 a year.
How much per month do we get? Less than
Oh,
30-some thousand?
Yeah, it's, you're talking about revenues, public safety.
like 35,000.
Yeah, roughly.
Something like that. So we got 3 more months basically to get.
September, October, November, December, well, the December would be 3 months.
But the year ends in November, so
3 months, September, October, November.
that means 105,000, we'll just call it 100,000. So we'll, by year end, fiscal year end,
We haven't gotten to August yet.
Well, hasn't even been for August yet.
Maybe, we may not even have gotten to July, you have to wait and see what.
well,
We'll be conservative, yep, good job.
They are pretty conservative, because it looks like in the beginning months, we were getting anywhere from 41,000 to 60,000, so
So, and what do we got left to pay out there?
for this year.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's already all been, I already did the journal
Already out.
entry.
Okay. So, in theory, not saying this is what we do, but in the past, we did do that back pay out of there. I'll just put that number up there, just as a placeholder. Do not kill me for doing this.
Haven't said a word yet.
No, but I know you care about it. And we all do. So as of year end, if we pay the back pay out of there, that should hopefully be a halfway conservative number by my rough math, but at year end, we'd be at 744. And then we got 12 times 35. We would take in 420. Again, that's probably conservative, because I think John's right, we normally are closer to 420, 440, 450. And as long as inflation keeps going up, I'm sure it'll be bigger than that.
Just bigger chalkboard.
Yeah. I probably should have started up there. Okay. withdrawal. So at year end, if we spent nothing at next November, so November 24, we'd be at be short of $1.2 million in there if we don't spend anything. The sheriff, has asked for a total of, that number's not right, because we had the flock was wrong. 234,530.
$237,030.
$237 what?
237,000.
Everybody looks at page
It's Fund 200 published.
44 in our books, you see what he's asking for. So he's asked for 3 vehicles, installation of equipment on that. Vests, the ballistic vests after the grants, new officer equipment, new officer training, central square maintenance, and flock cameras. The big one being $150,000 in cars, and then call it 25 grand, 150,000 for cars, and call it 25 grand, just short of that, of stuff for the cars. So,
Equipment, the $50,000 equipment is something else.
oh, is that something else? Sorry. Okay.
Or is that part of the car deal?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. So that's the big item in there, just so everybody's clear. And then there's joint dispatch, we had agreed. That's our portion of joint dispatch. That's in line with how much Watsika went up and the general fund went up. It went up proportionally the same percentage.
Well, is 126 is now the 158.
No,
Oh, it was
126.
150.
126 is what the county
Yeah, the county
contributes,
pays
which
more.
matches Watsika City.
Right.
Any additional
It's this line item right here.
overage of what joint dispatch is, usually is
157,
discussed
500.
between the public safety fund and 911, so. Eric requested 157.5 to come from public safety. And that's for the salary portion, for the communicators.
So if we get, kind of committed on this one on the joint dispatch, if we give the sheriff everything he was asking for, and that was the end of it, we'd be down to the ending balance. At the end of fiscal year 24, November 30th of 24 would be 769. And this radio issue, Eric is asking for, this is radio consoles. TSB. He's just asking for 150, it costs 300 each.
Oh,
Up here in the grant.
Up here in
in
the first line item of
transfer
ETSB,
from-
there's 150 up there. For revenue. That's the, I'll say backflow, but
It's actually John points out that maybe we didn't get another month's worth of.
Yeah, that number could be bigger. I think this is conservative as far as how much money's actually coming in, both for this year and for next year. There could be as much as $100,000 there if we're getting,
What,
not quite that much, 70,000.
for comparison's sake, what was our ending balance in 2022? And I know you're looking at 2024 there.
22, no. I don't have the fund balances on me.
You said for the end of 2022?
Yeah, our last year.
$841,529.44.
41.
We ended 2022 with 845.
841.
On the road, Rich.
I mean, '23, we budgeted $500,000 coming in. And we were gonna spend 450,000 of it, so we're adding 50,000. We're on pace. Something of that up here on the. This number isn't aligning with. This number's gotta be bigger, where we end up at the end of '23. That's what I think. Because this was projecting us to add 103,000 even after all the expenses, which would mean we would be 80,000 bucks. We off like 200 grand. So we have to.
Because we added 50. The budget is projecting at 50,000 on November.
Where are you looking at?
I'm just saying, in the budget, in the forecast, well, in the budget for this year, in '23, we were projecting that we would add $50,000, grow the fund by $50,000 net. The forecast, which I know there's a bunch of timing issues in there, was saying 103,000. We would grow it by 103,000, which would mean that number would be, if the forecast was right, that number should be more like 941. I think 940,000, and we just did what the budget was, it should be 900,000. So this number, how much we have in there and how much we're expecting to get the rest of the year doesn't align with something there.
With those forecasted numbers were put in there back in after May, so
Right.
they have not been updated.
Right.
I
Well, I
usually
understand, I'm
update
just
those,
saying
yeah.
that but even our budget was that we were gonna increase the fund by 50,000 and if we just even increase it by 50,000, that should be at 890, not 764, so there's 130,000.
Yeah, I think on average, we were projecting about 40,000, but there was a couple months there they brought in over 60.
We were low, is what you're saying.
Yeah, what I'm getting
Yeah,
at is this number should be
Higher.
900 something
Mhm.
at the end of fiscal year '23, so
Right.
somewhere, that number, obviously, or both are way more conservative than
Mhm.
what we're thinking here. So I guess just, even if you moved it up by 150, just for easy math, that would, it would be more, we need to get to the bottom of that, but the ending balance would be more like that, or at 24, I mean, and we need to talk with Kurt, or somebody, and get to the bottom
Yeah,
of it.
like I said, when we originally talked about it, it was like 40,000, but I'm showing
Joint
things
dispatch
like
is a yearly, the radio is, he's not here, but radio console's gonna last for several years, correct?
You're talking 15 years.
And then the other outlay there is for, the cars, which for the 237,000 for the sheriff outlay.
Right.
For autos, are we
motor.
gonna need another set of cars here and?
Well, for the automotive portion, it's 173, the additions that he's requesting goes to the 237. So you're looking at roughly 175,000 a year if you wanna maintain a rotating inventory of 3 new vehicles a year.
We should keep in mind, instead of having 2 guys in one vehicle, where you got 140,000 miles on a vehicle, you're only gonna have 70,000 because you only got 1 guy driving that vehicle.
But just for budgeting purposes moving forward,
Mhm.
we're spending, like she said, 150,000 plus equipment, 175,000. Is that gonna be ongoing? 3 cars a year, or are we gonna be able to go down to 2 cars a year?
I think once we get to a spot where we can reduce the mileage, we'll increase the years that we have these vehicles, and we can drop back down to 2 vehicles.
Just going forward.
Yeah.
We won't have the back pay issue for 3 years.
The problem, I mean, just compare it to last year as an example. This number and this number come in the same line item, and we had like $300,000 total in the current year budget. In addition to what goes to the joint dispatch. So it's obviously $80,000 more than what we spent this year, roughly. I don't know that we have to make a decision in this second, but we definitely have to at the next meeting.
We told the sheriff to give us this meeting to talk about at least 1 car.
Oh, but that was for this year.
Well, no.
So we got the 1, but there was 2 out of trolleys that
Yeah.
were sitting in the lot. And yeah, you were saying that by this month, you guys would have a better idea of where you're at if we could go ahead and purchase those for 2024 out of the public safety fund, since they're already here. And
Well, we just drag it into this year instead of next year, I guess is the idea.
But we told him we'd have to give him
Yeah.
approval
Yeah, you're right.
at this meeting, but
the Watsika police chief is salivating over them.
Because the one car we said yes to, refresh my memory,
Yes.
that was already in the
It was
budget.
already in the budget.
yeah. we
So
already
these
got-
were just,
These are
Well, I
ones
mean,
you
I-
ordered in anticipation that came in earlier than,
They came in early.
yeah,
There's projecting for,
but if we don't take them, then they'll have to wait.
price could go up and.
Yeah, prices are, so. Let me grab it. I think we have to do that. We gotta grab my phone.
Plus, it looks like here.
And it doesn't really change math, it just
No.
switches what year it's
what
in.
year it is.
Yeah.
So you need a.
I mean, other than this stuff, that's not right.
At the end.
I think that's low.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the year, we'll have the 619 or the corrected figure for it.
I think because of
7 or,
Yeah.
we,
Douglas is like, so we need a motion for those cars. Or we
I think we need a motion for that.
That's the only thing that we have to really,
Do this moment, but we definitely have to have an answer next finance committee on Eric's additional request and I guess, and the one car that sheriff would want would because we basically have gotten 2 of the 3 that he's asking for in the budget.
Right.
We just drag it into this year and send
I
next
think
year.
we're dragging it this year. So you just need a motion to purchase the 2 cars. Any, what's the dollar amount?
I think it was right at 100 total. So I think they were like 49.5 or something.
Are you trading anything in or no?
We've got 3 Impalas. We traded 1 in, so we're not gonna get much for those 3 Impalas. And we've got a Trailblazer that we're gonna probably get rid of as well.
Better do it not to exceed. Or just. Oh, I was authorized.
And we're coming up into,
What about equipment?
we've already got the equipment.
Okay.
So we already bought that in preparation. But we're coming into a season where we were trading in Impalas and getting $2,500. Now we've got a 2019 Tahoe that's got 180,000. We can get 16,000 for it.
Right. Good. I move to authorize sheriff to purchase the 2 cars at Raleigh. That came in early.
I'll second.
Vehicles. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That would knock that money down there.
We need to get, we need to update this. I think, let's finish this real quick. Alright.
May,
Yes,
just an informational question, not about that, I understand you're getting it updated. When you're getting rid of a Trailblazer and 3 Impalas, I'm just curious, do you trade those in or do you sell them out, do we sell them outright?
We trade those to Raleigh's
Okay,
in lieu of money for the cars.
right,
Yeah.
I understand.
I was thinking about doing a bid, but that's such a process now. I don't know if we're gonna.
so will it come in less than the 50,000 then, because of that?
Yeah, with the trade-in of the vehicles, yeah. So like the last vehicle, I think we got $2,400 for the Impala. So that came off of the 49.5 or whatever it was.
Okay. I guess, I think we can vote on that and do that, and then I'll say, yeah, let's just vote.
Barons,
Yes.
Alt,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Geiger,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. All right, I think, can we get like Joe and probably the sheriff too, help me get this straightened out. So I think the big part is, where are we and how much more do we have coming in, and then we just make a rough estimate.
Yeah, I'll talk
we
to
think
Kurt
is our
and get
monthly
a
run
more,
rate.
but, after they balance or whatever, I'll get a
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
I'll work on it.
Okay, so we need where are we actually at and what we think our run rate is for the rest of the year / next year, and then, you, Sheriff, if you could, we're gonna have to modify the budget then item, because we're
Yeah.
gonna take these out of
This year's.
the 23.
Okay.
You're not gonna need 3 cars for next year, is
Correct.
what I'm saying. So that 150,000 is gonna be 50,000.
Right.
But
75.
what I wanna complete is, what is we need that for our purposes, I guess, what the breakdown is between this year and next year. But I still wanna know what the net total cost is gonna be. So if we are gonna if it really isn't gonna cost us 150,000 because we get trade-in value, then I would think that number is gonna be less than that, right? So if we can get those numbers straightened out here and maybe sent.
Yeah, it just depends on, what they'll give me for trade-in.
20,000, these out those.
Right, so we don't really need 150,000 is what I'm getting at.
Right, it would be less. But
Yeah.
like I said, the 3 Impalas are not gonna net us a whole boatload of
Sure.
money.
Sure.
Even the Trailblazer, if we get $3,000 for that Trailblazer, I'd be super happy.
Now, you're approving the purchase of 2 new vehicles for this year. Are you still planning on keeping 3 on for next year?
No.
No, okay, so then you're,
I think that's what we're saying, we're gonna hold those
you're going down
into this
to,
year. 2 of the
I just
3
wanna
that you're
make-
requesting are coming down, right?
so you're gonna go down to 1?
We're all on the same
One
page.
next year.
So there'd be 1 in the budget for next year is what then you would be requesting
Okay.
after we do this.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we just need to get those numbers updated. I want this to get this, and maybe we email it to everybody, but
I took a picture.
the real numbers.
I'll take a picture of it and I'll talk to Kurt about more solid numbers.
And then, I guess on the one other car that would then be left to get, or that you would be requesting, are you trading anything in on that, or
That
you don't know?
That would end up being one of the 2019 Tahoes, so we're
That should
gonna,
be worth something.
so yeah, that's gonna be, so we got one of our 10 2019 Tahoes is in the utility side of it, to where guy wrecks a car, we gotta have a car for that guy to drive. So that's got 170 some thousand on it now, but we're able to push the Tahoes and the trucks a little bit further on mileage than you could with the V6 Impalas. You get to about 150,000 in the Impalas, and they're really starting to nickel and dime you.
Yeah.
So, but we have had some issues with air conditioning, evaporators, and
Sure.
stuff like that.
Okay.
Big expense.
Well, if you could just help us get the numbers figured out on that, so we know what the heck we're looking at and what the ending balance will be and all those things projected.
Do we need to talk to Jill to see about revisiting our total insurance line item costs, because we know insurance is going up. I don't know about workman's comp, that's, or has she factored in insurance increases?
Are you-
Well, the general line-
Which kind of insurance, health or?
No, I'm just saying in general, looks like everything we've all heard and read and had ourselves.
What
Yeah,
what
I
I,
adjusted
the
them.
math I did was,
Mhm.
just to be clear, because I probably didn't make it clear. I was texting Jill when somebody
We
was
got it,
talking.
yeah.
But, we're at like 185 for general liability insurance. And the other part of that, whatever number, I don't know what that was, but, it doesn't matter. 185 for general liability insurance for the current year. And so, no, 160.
185 is what we had in there based off of a trend prior to having the building evaluations
Correct.
done.
Okay, so 185. We're at
Right.
260 for the current year.
Right,
That was, yeah. And then we know that we're gonna get $11,000-ish removed, so call it 250 is where our baseline is for this year
right,
after those adjustments. And then I was saying, let's just put
20%.
20% increase on it. And that puts us, what is it, 300? So that would put us at 300,000 for the budget line item
For liability.
for general liability. So that's an increase from the 185 that's in there of 115,000.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then I don't know about workers' comp.
Workers' comp is, I'm pretty confident with that number, knock on wood, we're doing very well at staying under with workers' comp claims, so that number has been generally stable the last few years, so.
So she's gonna adjust that, but that's a separate fund, not the general fund,
Right.
so
The only thing that'll
That's
affect
what she was
the only
saying
thing that'll
earlier.
affect the general fund is the health insurance portion.
And then,
And the health insurance portion, I currently have 10% in there.
right,
Based off of the employees that we currently have and their choices on health insurance plans, that fluctuates, it's gonna be a fluctuating number, but she's hoping to get around 7 or less, so.
Good.
I still have it in as 10,
that's fine, I just didn't want to.
I mean,
Yeah.
0 would be wonderful.
Yeah, we were kind
Speaking
of,
as
there
an
was
employee,
4 conversations going on about
insurance,
that, but I think it's clear now. That's good to get clear for everyone. So I think, knock on wood, barring some other surprise, the general fund, we're pretty much ready to go on that for the budget year. But, I mean, we don't need to actually approve that till,
Right, we have some time to review it some more and see if there's any other major things that come
well,
up.
but that's public safety, so different fund. But the general fund, which is normally the hornet's nest, is good, or balanced. I don't know about good, but
It's there.
okay. So if we can get these numbers, if you could help us get these updated. And then maybe email them to everybody, and then everybody can look at them and understand what's being requested here. So sheriff's number in total between 23 and 24 probably isn't gonna change much, other than maybe an allowance for some trade-ins, but it's not gonna move the number huge amounts. There may be a difference in which year that's happening, because we just voted to pull some of the cars forward into the current year rather than next year, which will impact the public safety. But it would basically be what's remaining for the 24 budget in public safety on his request, which would basically be $100,000-ish less than that. And then $158,000 for joint dispatch, which we're kind of committed to. And then Eric's radio council thing, and to be honest with you, I don't understand it well enough to say yes, no, whatever. So, I mean, I get what he's talking about, that it's, we would have to make a decision whether we want to do that or not.
Which I'm confused by too, because this, what Eric's proposing communication wise, would that communicate with your people?
Yeah.
Without going to the same systems? Because if he does the Kenwood and you do StarCom, are they gonna easily communicate?
If we did StarCom, we would have to have, I think Eric mentioned, consulate. Is that the term that he used? So.
I think his quote would be capable for StarCom, I thought I heard him say. So that $300,000 he's wanting to spend, and he wants $150,000 from public safety, I believe he said that would allow him to be StarCom capable. So I don't know if the cost would go down if we decided not to go there or whatever, but I thought he said that. Maybe I misheard.
The Motorola quote does include the consulate, which is $103,000, I believe. So, and that's, like I said, a 15-year, this is how long it's gonna last, ish.
Okay. So I think the big thing we need to focus on next meeting is public safety, getting those numbers nailed down. Okay? Anything else? Old business, new business, or? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
A couple of minor things. First of all, I wanted to remind everybody about the electronic recycling event on this coming Saturday. We're paying half the cost of that, so take advantage of the opportunity.
What's the
hours on that? I do not know, but I know they start early in the morning.
Starts at 9, I was told last night.
9 to noon, I think.
Oh, we told them we don't want to do that. It must be over at
Big R's.
parking lot.
It's at
Where?
Riverside, isn't it?
Right. Slowly over there. Bill's Kmart opens.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention about the tentative agreements that we have, that we'll be looking at approving the one for the telecommunicators next Tuesday. The agreement for the ASME people will probably, I'll be bringing before the board on the October meeting. But that contract is for the following year. Telecommunicators, like we always said, is
Retroactive.
backdated. The last thing that I have that I probably need a motion on is that the Watsika Area Chamber of Commerce is desiring to use our parking lot again this year for their trunk or treat program. It's gonna be on October 21st.
Okay. We just need a motion to say that it's okay.
I'll make it, that's allowed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's all I got.
Okay. I forgot the claims as I was signing. I started signing them, and I'm like, yeah,
They'll sign them all.
Yeah. No questions then.
Barron.
Yes.
Alt. Bowers.
Yes.
Steiger.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yep.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, any other old business, new business?
Move to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.